My name is Elijah Brooks. I'm 36 years old, and for nearly a decade, I believed loyalty and hard work would always win, until I learned betrayal wears the face of someone you trust. I met Ryan at my first agency job, back when we were both just trying to break into corporate strategy. We rose together, shared ideas, drinks, late-night brainstorms. We weren't just co-workers, we were friends. Or so I thought. When my dream position opened up, strategy director at a major tech firm we'd both admired for years, Ryan knew how much it meant to me. I spent weeks preparing for the interview, practiced mock sessions with him, shared my pitch deck, even let him see my market insights presentation, the one I'd spent 2 years refining. He wished me luck, told me, "This one's yours." 2 days later, I got an email, "Thank you for applying, but we've gone in a different direction." A week later, Ryan posted on LinkedIn, thrilled to announce my new role as strategy director at ClarityWorks. At first I stared at the screen, unblinking. I thought it had to be a mistake, but then I saw it. The same pitch language, same slide format. My slide format, my strategy, my numbers. He hadn't just beaten me to the job, he became me to get it. I didn't cry, I didn't explode, I just sat there as the air left the room. And something in me went silent. That was the moment I realized I hadn't lost the opportunity. He had stolen it. But I wasn't going to come for him with noise. I was going to dismantle him with patience, quiet, precise. And when I was finished, he wouldn't just lose the title, he'd lose the trust that got him there. The first thing I did was nothing. That's what he wouldn't expect. No angry call, no confrontation, just distance. I knew Ryan. He thrived on applause and validation. He wanted me to react, to lash out, to give him something to twist. Instead, I vanished from his narrative. I muted him everywhere, scrubbed our mutual contacts from view, and went still. But I wasn't licking wounds. I was studying, observing, waiting for the moment the cracks would appear in the shiny new title he'd stolen with my blueprint. Through a quiet connection still inside ClarityWorks, I got the truth 2 weeks later. Ryan had barely made it through his onboarding. He was fumbling presentations, recycling buzzwords he didn't understand. Worse, he'd started pitching my exact strategy to teams that were already familiar with it. One VP called it oddly familiar, another flagged his overconfidence. He didn't have my depth, my data. He'd memorized the surface but never understood the structure. And now he was sinking. But I wasn't going to watch him drown. I was going to make sure the water rose just high enough to take what he valued most, his credibility. I started making quiet moves. I updated my portfolio, refined my strategy, and reached out to 3 key consultants who worked with ClarityWorks, not for jobs, just collaboration. I let them see the depth Ryan never understood. I showed them my white paper, the one with timestamps, receipts, and published timestamps. Ryan hadn't scrubbed from his theft. One of them asked casually, "Didn't Ryan present this recently?" I smiled and shrugged. "I wouldn't know. I haven't heard from him in a while." That's all it took. I didn't accuse. I just let them wonder. Meanwhile, I accepted a short-term contract role at one of ClarityWorks' competitors. They didn't know about the drama. They just saw a strategist with insight they could actually use. While Ryan was floundering under the pressure of a title he didn't earn, I was quietly building a reputation that made people question how he'd gotten there in the first place. Every move I made was deliberate, not to attack him, but to make it impossible for him to outrun the truth he'd buried under his smile. 3 weeks later, I got a message from one of our old co-workers. "Hey, did you know Ryan's struggling? I heard from someone at CW that leadership is getting suspicious. They said he's all talk, no traction." I didn't reply. I just archived it. Because this wasn't revenge, this was realignment. The storm he invited was finally knocking, and he had no umbrella. By the end of the month, the whispers turned into meetings. Ryan had walked into a role expecting praise, but left a trail of under-delivered projects, confused clients, and strategy decks that couldn't survive a single follow-up question. ClarityWorks had given him the crown, but now they were asking why the king didn't know how to lead. My contact inside the company said it plainly. They're starting to realize he pitched something he didn't build. I said nothing. I didn't need to, because truth, when it finally arrives, doesn't knock. It kicks in the door. The consultant side quietly worked with. They started submitting reports. Subtle, not damning, but enough to raise red flags. Inconsistent market data, lack of clarity on rollout timelines, strategy overlap with existing frameworks. All things Ryan couldn't explain, because none of it came from him. Meanwhile, I published an article online, short, sharp, and dated. It outlined a niche branding methodology I'd developed over years, the same one Ryan had borrowed without understanding. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. The timestamps spoke for themselves. Anyone inside ClarityWorks looking closely could connect the dots. I began receiving messages, not from Ryan, but from people around him, former co-workers, mutual contacts, some confused, some skeptical, some just curious. Was that article based on your old framework? You worked on that pitch last year, right? Did you know Ryan's been using your slide structure? I stayed neutral. Ideas evolve, I'd reply. But every message was another crack, another piece of evidence that he hadn't just failed to rise to the job, he'd faked his way into it. The tipping point came when a client, one of their largest, pulled out of a campaign last minute, citing loss of confidence in leadership execution. I knew the account. I had handled it 3 years ago. I knew their CEO preferred precision over personality, and Ryan had always been all performance. That one exit triggered a full internal review. Suddenly, the company that had dismissed me as just one of the guys was scrambling to understand how they'd handed their trust to a liar in a tailored suit. And then, quietly, Ryan's name disappeared from the company's site. No announcement, no farewell post, just gone. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I went to my desk, poured myself a coffee, and opened a new project brief. Because I didn't come to ruin his life. I came to reclaim the one he tried to steal. And by doing nothing but standing in the truth, I'd done exactly that. It was a Wednesday afternoon when my phone rang with a number I hadn't saved, but immediately recognized. Ryan. I stared at the screen for a few rings, considering whether to answer. Not out of emotion. I had already processed the betrayal, but out of curiosity. What do people say when they've been found out, exposed by their own shortcuts? I answered on the fourth ring, let the silence hang long enough to make him uneasy. Elijah, he said finally, his voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. I think we need to talk. I didn't offer him comfort, didn't ask how he was. I simply said, talk. There was a pause, then a long, exhausted sigh. Look, I know things got out of hand. I didn't expect it to go that far. I didn't mean for it to turn into this. The deflection was almost laughable. This, as if this was some spontaneous accident, not a choice built on betrayal. You didn't mean to take the job, I said calmly, or you didn't mean to get caught. Silence. Long, heavy. The sound of someone realizing there's no narrative left to spin. I messed up, he said, eventually. I was scared I wouldn't land anything, and when I saw your pitch, it worked. I thought I could handle it. I thought I'd figure it out once I was in. I didn't respond, because that was the root of it all. He didn't earn the opportunity, he took it, planning to learn later. But some things can't be faked, and when you steal someone's foundation, You shouldn't be surprised when the structure doesn't hold. I didn't call to ask for anything, he continued. I guess I wanted you to hear it from me. I almost laughed, as if I hadn't already heard everything through his choices, but I let him finish. I know I burned the bridge. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to say it. I'm sorry. I let those words hang in the air. They didn't feel redemptive. They felt like smoke after the fire had already done its damage. I didn't say it's okay. I didn't say I understand. What I said was simple. I hope you figure out who you are when you're not standing in someone else's shoes. Then I hung up. No rage, no satisfaction, just closure. And as I sat there staring at the quiet room around me, I realized I hadn't won because he lost. I had won because I never became him, and that was enough. After that call, I didn't think about Ryan much. I didn't need to. His apology wasn't redemption, it was residue, something left over after the damage had already been done. But for me, the real work was just beginning. Not revenge, not reputation management, restoration. I had built the strategy he stole in silence, so now I would rebuild it in my name, under my voice, with no shadows overhead. The world had heard his version, the knockoff. Now it was time they saw the original. I turned my personal blog into a knowledge hub. No fluff, no self-praise, just raw frameworks, real case studies, and the kind of content only someone who lived through the trenches could create. Within weeks, my following doubled. People weren't just reading, they were learning, sharing. I started getting invites to speak on panels I used to just watch from the back of the room. Not because I chased recognition, but because the work finally had my name attached to it. No middleman, no thief in a borrowed suit. One night, I opened the original pitch deck, the one I'd shared with Ryan before he betrayed me. I scrolled through the slides, not to rewrite them, but to remember the man who created them before he was tested. Every line, every model, every insight was still mine, but now they lived in a different version of me. A version sharpened by betrayal, but not defined by it. A version who didn't need to be loud to be powerful. And that's the part they never see coming. When you survive betrayal without bitterness, when you rise without dragging them down, that's the real revenge. Not taking their title, not exposing their lie, but thriving so fully in your truth, they become irrelevant. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but when someone steals your work, your voice, your future, it doesn't feel flattering. It feels like erasure, like watching your reflection move without you. Ryan didn't just take an idea. He tried to become me. He put on my words like armor and thought no one would notice the weight didn't fit. But here's what I've learned. You can't wear someone else's legacy without eventually collapsing under the truth of your own emptiness. I didn't destroy him. I didn't need to. He built his fall with every stolen sentence, every answer he couldn't explain, every room he entered pretending to be the person I'd spent a decade becoming. That's the thing about shortcuts. They always leave you unprepared for the long road. In the end, the lie fell apart on its own. I didn't have to push. I just had to keep walking and let the silence behind me do the talking. Now, when I mentor younger professionals, I don't warn them about competition. I warn them about proximity, that the ones closest to you are often the ones most tempted to cut corners through your work. But more importantly, I teach them how to watermark their brilliance, not just in PDFs and timestamps, but in character, in consistency, in the kind of excellence you can't fake for long, because anyone can borrow a pitch. But they can't borrow the patience it took to build it. As for Ryan, I haven't heard his name in months. He doesn't show up in my feed, doesn't get invited to the rooms I'm in now, and if he ever does, it'll be as a lesson, not a threat, not a rival, Just a reminder of what happens when someone tries to skip the hard part and steal the reward. I don't hate him. I don't envy him. I just outgrew him. And to anyone listening, if someone's trying to silence you by wearing your voice, don't shout to be heard. Stand still in your truth. Time will do the rest. The lie will run out of breath long before you do. Subscribe if you've ever been underestimated, replaced, or betrayed by someone who couldn't walk in your shadow, let alone your shoes. Your story's not over. It's finally yours.